In a remote corner of the African continent, where the plains stretched endlessly under a sky ablaze with stars, there existed a small, isolated village called Tuli. Nestled between towering mountains and thick, impenetrable forests, Tuli was a place where time seemed to stand still. The villagers lived simple lives, farming the land and raising livestock, their days governed by the rising and setting of the sun. But when night fell, and the world was bathed in darkness, the people of Tuli became acutely aware of an ancient, haunting presence that lurked just beyond the edge of their understanding. The villagers spoke in hushed tones of the shadow of the moon, an entity said to appear only when the moon hung full and bright in the sky. The elders claimed that this shadow was no ordinary darkness, but a creature of immense power, capable of stealing the very life from those who crossed its path. It was said that the shadow would creep silently through the village, unseen and unheard, until it found its prey. The victim would feel a cold touch on their skin, followed by an overwhelming sense of dread, before their heart stopped beating. By morning, their lifeless body would be found, untouched but drained of all warmth, as if the soul itself had been taken. Despite the fear that gripped the village, there were some who dismissed the tale as mere superstition. Among them was a young woman named Amara, known for her sharp mind and unwavering courage. Amara had grown up hearing the stories of the shadow of the moon, but she had always been skeptical. She believed that the villagers were simply afraid of the unknown, attributing natural deaths to a mythical being. Determined to uncover the truth, Amara resolved to confront the shadow and put an end to the fear that plagued her people. As the next full moon approached, Amara prepared herself for the encounter. She gathered supplies, including a spear blessed by the village shaman, and set out to explore the surrounding forest, where the shadow was said to dwell. The forest was dense and overgrown, with towering trees that blocked out the sun, creating a perpetual twilight. Amara moved cautiously, her senses heightened, aware that she was entering a place few had dared to venture. As night fell, the moon rose high into the sky, casting an eerie silver light over the landscape. Amara found a clearing deep within the forest and settled in to wait. The air was thick with tension and the usual sounds of the night. The chirping of crickets, the hoots of owls, were strangely absent. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath, anticipating what was to come. Hours passed, and just as Amara began to wonder if the shadow was nothing more than a figment of the villagers' imagination, she noticed a movement in the trees. A shiver ran down her spine as she watched a dark shape emerge from the undergrowth, gliding silently towards her. The figure was indistinct, more like a ripple in the air than a solid form, but its presence was undeniable. The temperature dropped, and Amara felt an icy chill wrap around her, as if the very air had turned to frost. The shadow stopped a few feet away, hovering in the moonlight. Amara's heart pounded in her chest, but she refused to back down. She raised her spear, its blade glinting in the pale light, and called out to the entity. "Show yourself," she demanded, her voice strong despite the fear that gripped her. "What are you, and why do you haunt this village?" The shadow remained still for a moment, then slowly began to take shape. The darkness coalesced into a figure, a tall, imposing silhouette with long, flowing robes that seemed to be made of the night itself. Its face was hidden beneath a hood, but Amara could feel its gaze piercing through her. "I am the one who walks in the shadow of the moon," the figure intoned, its voice a low, echoing whisper that seemed to come from everywhere at once. "I am the guardian of this land, cursed to wander in the darkness, bound to the cycle of the moon." Amara narrowed her eyes, refusing to be intimidated. "Why do you kill the innocent? What have the people of Tuli done to deserve this?" The figure sighed, a sound filled with ancient sorrow. "I do not take life by choice," it said. "Long ago, I was a man, a protector of this land, sworn to defend it from all who would do harm. But, in my arrogance, I sought to challenge the gods themselves, believing that I could wield their power. They cursed me for my hubris, binding me to this form, and now I am doomed to wander the earth, taking life with every full moon. It is not by my will, but by the will of the curse that I am compelled to do so." Amara listened in stunned silence, her mind racing. She had never imagined that the shadow could be anything other than a malevolent spirit. But now she saw that it was a being trapped in a fate not of its own making. She lowered her spear, her resolve hardening. "Is there a way to break the curse?" she asked. The figure hesitated, then nodded slowly. "There is a way, but it requires great sacrifice. To break the curse, someone must willingly offer their life to take my place, binding themselves to the cycle of the moon. Only then will I be free, and the shadow will be lifted from this land." Amara's heart sank at the words. She had come to defeat the shadow, not to trade one life for another. But as she stood there, staring into the darkness, she knew what she had to do. The people of Tuli deserved to live without fear, and if it meant saving them, she was willing to make the ultimate sacrifice. "I will do it," she said, her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. "I will take your place and bear the curse if it means my people will be free." The figure seemed to recoil in surprise, its form flickering like a dying flame. "You would give your life for them?" it asked, disbelief coloring its tone. Amara nodded. "Yes, they are my people, my family. I will not let them suffer because of a curse that was not their doing." For a moment the shadow was silent, as if contemplating her words. Then slowly it began to shrink, its form dissolving into the night. "Very well," it said, its voice softer now, almost gentle. "Your sacrifice is accepted. The curse will pass to you and I will be free." As the shadow faded, Amara felt a cold wind sweep through the clearing, carrying with it the weight of the curse. She shivered as the darkness seeped into her bones, filling her with an ancient, relentless power. Her vision blurred and she fell to her knees, her strength ebbing away. But before she lost consciousness, she heard the voice of the figure one last time. "Thank you," it whispered, "for giving me the peace I could not find." When Amara awoke, she was lying in the clearing, bathed in the light of the setting moon. The shadow was gone, and the forest had returned to its natural state, the sounds of life once again filling the air. She knew then that the curse had been lifted from the land, but it had not disappeared entirely. It had simply found a new home within her. Amara returned to Tuli, her heart heavy with the burden she now carried. The villagers welcomed her back as a hero, unaware of the sacrifice she had made. She told them that the shadow was gone and that they need no longer fear the night. But she kept the truth of her fate to herself, knowing that her time was now limited. As the months passed, Amara noticed changes within herself. Her strength began to fade, and she found it harder to stay awake during the day. But when the full moon rose, she felt an irresistible pull, drawing her back to the forest. She knew that the time would come when she could no longer resist, when she would become the new shadow of the moon, bound to wander the earth until another took her place. But until that day came, Amara continued to live among her people, cherishing every moment she had left. She had saved her village, and for that, she would be remembered. Yet deep in her heart, she knew that the true test of her courage was still to come, when she would face the darkness alone and finally embrace the fate she had chosen. And so, the tale of the shadow of the moon became part of the village's history, a story told to each new generation. But now, it was a story of sacrifice, of a young woman who gave everything to save her people, and of the darkness that still lingered, waiting for the next full moon.